Hello, everyone, and welcome to Exploring Consciousness. The subject today is the three principal aspects of the path, which is a short text by Lama Tsongkhapa, a famous Tibetan master of the Gelug tradition. It is said to be the condensed version of the Lamrim Chenmo, which is one of the most famous text in Buddhism, and it describes three aspects that are necessary to be able to awaken, and that's the practices of renunciation, bodhicitta, and shunyata. Shunyata is the wisdom which knows the ultimate reality of all phenomena, or the wisdom of emptiness. And bodhicitta is simply the opened heart, the awakened heart of the Buddhas. So I will be talking about these three aspects, starting with renunciation. But before we do that, let's just take a few minutes to settle into the present moment. Good way to do that is to check into the body and notice, okay, how am I feeling just now? And if that's supportive for you, then you can close your eyes. Maybe you would like to use the breath as a support. Breathing into the contractions in the body, and with the out breath, relaxing, letting go. Just notice what happens when you pay more attention to your inner life and the sensations in the body. We carry around so much of the energies we pick up during the day through our interactions with other people. That it can be so beneficial and helpful to notice them, to acknowledge them, to show them some kindness, gesture of friendliness. That helps us in relaxing and becoming more comfortable in our own skin. And also helps our mind to settle and not be so distracted, to be more present in the now. See if it's possible for you to dissolve the feeling that you're sitting up in your head, looking down on your body, to just melting and embracing the whole body as one, from the toes to the top of your head. and then just resting. Allowing whatever happens to go where it needs to go without trying to get rid of it, trying to hold on to it, trying to increase it. So it's really a practice of allowing this moment to be as it is. So how did that feel? Do you feel a bit more relaxed, a bit more grounded, a bit centered in the present moment? Maybe you feel less stressed, less contracted, less worried. Or maybe nothing happened and you feel the same. So either way, let's start today's topic. And I will start with talking about what's in Tibetan Buddhism called renunciation. And rather than talking about renunciation in a traditional way, I would like to remove this word from the Buddhist context and try to speak about it in everyday words and try to adjust that to the way we live our lives and our worldview here in the West. So another way we could talk about renunciation is a process of emerging. And it's a process of emerging out from the usual way we live our lives. And how is that? So a common trait all of us humans have is a sense of dissatisfaction. So all of us long to be free of dissatisfaction, and the way we go about that, the way we go about gathering happiness, creating a happy life, is by accumulating pleasurable objects. So our pursuit of happiness is going towards objects that cannot give us what we long for. So all beings, without exceptions, long for that lasting happiness, that sense of wholeness. But very few, or maybe no one, experiences that because we're not looking for it in the right place. So as long as we're looking for wholeness, a sense of joy, a deep satisfaction in our lives, in things that are temporary, in things that cannot really give to us what we long for, then we will never find it. So that's the emergence out of dissatisfaction, is realizing that, oh, my relationships, my job, my money, the food I eat, the things I drink or smoke or consume in any way can't give me that sense of lasting happiness. So no matter what, these things can give me a boost or a kick of happiness and pleasure, but soon it fades and I'm already looking for the next thing. So the next big thing to acquire, a new house, a promotion at work, another child maybe, or a new partner who's younger and more attractive, a better car. So, and then we find that we get a short-term boost of happiness from these things, and then sooner or later we don't experience that happiness anymore, and then automatically our mind goes to what's next. So this is a very common way of living, and this is called samsara in the Buddhist view. So emerging out of that by realizing, okay, so what I truly long for cannot be found in these things, so I need to look somewhere else. What renunciation or emergence does not mean is, oh, because these things cannot give me lasting satisfaction, then they are bad and I should avoid them altogether, or that they're dangerous, or something like that. So that's a common way of misunderstanding the Buddhist teachings and viewing all forms of pleasure as attachment, and viewing that as an obstacle to enlightenment or realizing the true nature of reality. So to support that and to dispel any confusion, I would like to read a quote from Lama Thupten Yeshe from the book Introduction to Tantra, which is my favorite book of all. So if you haven't read it, I would definitely recommend you to do that. And let's see, here he writes, what the development of true renunciation implies is that we no longer rely on sensory pleasures for our ultimate happiness. We see the futility of expecting deep satisfaction from such limited, transitory phenomena. It is important to understand this point clearly. Renunciation is not the same as giving up pleasure or denying ourselves happiness. It means giving up our unreal expectations about ordinary pleasures. These expectations themselves are what turn pleasure into pain. It cannot be said too often that there is nothing wrong with pleasure. It is our grasping, exaggerating, distorting, and polluting attitude towards pleasure that must be abandoned. So that is renunciation. giving up the distorted, limiting, and polluted view we have on pleasure. Giving up the, ooh, give me more, and instead being open and grateful for the pleasure we receive, and using the experience of pleasure as a resource in our awakening process. So when we experience pleasure, all of us experience a rise of comfortable, warm, excited energy in our body. And this vital energy makes us relaxed and joyful. So that energy can be used to look into the nature of mind. It makes it easier for us to go deep inside ourselves, beyond our thoughts, emotions, perceptions. So pleasure is actually an invaluable resource, according to the view of Tantra. And is not something we should avoid, but what we should be careful with is the way we ordinarily look at pleasure. So if we can manage that balancing act where we at least have acknowledged in ourselves that no matter how much pleasure we would get, we would not be happy, that even if we would get our own castle and we will have unlimited money and we would be healthy all the time and young, and we would have access to all kinds of pleasurable objects, intoxicants, sexual partners, we would still not be satisfied, because the problem lies in our mind, in the way we view these pleasures. So as long as we can see the pleasures for what they are, then it's okay to enjoy them, because then you can let them go. Then when the chocolate runs out, then there's no crisis emerging. So that's emerging from dissatisfaction. And the analogy to the flower is it's the emerging from the ground or the soil. So the seed which sprouts and then emerges out of the ground, so out from samsara, so to say. So what's next? For the flower, it's the opening, the blooming. And so the next step refers to bodhicitta and the awakened heart, or the heart which is open to all beings. So usually the way we live our lives is very selfish and egocentric, and the whole society we live in today and business culture and everything evolves around personal gain, around profit. The mantra for the modern West seems to be, what's in it for me? So this way of living is a very contracted sense of being, and even if we view ourselves as a pretty nice guy that has a pretty big heart and is generous and so on, and we are still holding on to that sense of I or self as more important than others. So it's important to look into that feeling that our own happiness is more important than others. So that's what we need to dissolve with these practices of opening the heart to all beings. And there are many ways we can practice that. There are many tools and teachings in Buddhism that are particularly designed to do that. And the practices of loving kindness, of metta, of remembering the kindness you've received from others. But the ground from which that open heart can bloom is the realization of equanimity. So it's basically the view that all beings are equal, are the same. So regardless if I view someone as a friend, a family, a stranger, or an enemy, they are all the same. They are all equally valuable, and they all share the same nature. So trying to open our heart with that recognition that the people I love because they are my friends and we've shared many fantastic experiences together, we've confided in each other, we've had great conversations, we shared secrets with each other, we trust each other. So our friends are friends only as long as we view them that way. So friends can become strangers and friends can become enemies, just like enemies can become friends and even strangers can become friends. So everyone who is our friend today has sometime in our life been a stranger. So that shows just how loose these groups are that we place people in: family, friends, stranger, and enemy. And that's why it's important to try to relax those distinctions and try to show kindness and compassion to everyone equally, regardless of your relationship with them. Because your relationship with them can change. So that could be a great way of opening the heart. Another way, which is prevalent in the tantric and non-dual teachings, is the recognition that all beings share Buddha nature, awareness, consciousness as their true nature, as their fundamental essence. We are all one is another way to say that. So if we have that feeling inside that, okay, all beings are one and the same, then that will make it easier for our heart to bloom naturally, because then we will start seeing all beings as ourself. and one with the person we love, and one with our children, one with our family. And even though we do not know that person, we do know that first of all, we know that person is a human, that person has thoughts and feelings, that person has gone through difficult situations in his or her life. So already just knowing that very basic human condition, which we all share, is enough to develop a sense of kinship with all beings. But to go even further and say that our deepest nature is one and the same with each other, then what would naturally arise from such an insight is warmth, is an unconditional kindness and friendliness to others. So that's the blooming of the heart. That's bodhicitta, and that's and that comes from equanimity, seeing all beings as the same. Let me read another quote from Lama. So this narrow concern for our own happiness and our own liberation makes it impossible for us to realize the vast potential of our human mind and heart. Such self-centered concern values the welfare of just one being, ourself, over the welfare of the countless others who share life's problems with us. This extremely restricted view inevitably causes our heart to close. Then, even if we do not say so consciously, it is as if we feel, I am the most important person in the world. The problems that others have are of no concern to me. It is only my own happiness that counts. And even to say it's only my happiness and my family's and friends' happiness that counts is a form of ego grasping. So as long as we remain so tightly focused upon our own happiness, whether temporal or ultimate, we will never experience the expansiveness of a truly open heart. So that is what needs to go. So that doesn't mean that you stop loving your children, your partner, your family members, your friends, and start treating them like enemies or strangers. No, that means simply that you loosen the distinction between these categories and see that regardless of what category a person is in, for you, that person is a human being and that person shares your deepest nature. And that's enough reason to care about that person's well-being. So, and that does not mean that you will have the same kind of relationship with everyone. So you will still have a special relationship with your partner, you will have a special relationship with your children, with your family members, with your mother and father. And so the dynamics of that relationship doesn't necessarily have to change. So what needs to change is the view on these people. So, and what needs to go away are the concepts limiting you that are saying, no, I can't love this person. I don't care about this person because I don't know him or because I don't like him or her. So those are the things that need to be looked through. And that's the blooming of the heart. Okay, so dissolving. So what happens after the flower has bloomed? After a while, it withers and then it goes back into the soil. So we could say it dies, but it doesn't actually die. It's undergoing the process of dissolution. And it is that process of dissolution that enables the plant to grow again the next spring. So dissolution here refers to the dissolution of ignorance, the dissolution of the confused way we view reality. It is the relaxing of our contracted sense of holding on to I, me. So all of us have a sense of separation inside of us. It is almost the common human condition, you could say, the feeling of separation, and it's encoded into the way we live our lives. It's encoded into our language, where it's basically impossible to speak to another without referring to yourself as I and the other as you. And so that sense is pretty clear. So how can we relax that? How can we dissolve that? How can we look through that and realize how reality actually exists? So first of all, we need to look through this illusion. So we need to see that it's not real. So how do we do that? We question it. We question this sense of being a separate entity from everything else. We can ask the question, okay, then where is this self? So if I exist separately from everything and everyone else, if I am I, or I am this me, which I'm constantly referring to, then where am I? And so there are many practices we can use to look into that, to dissolve that concept, and to see, wow, I can't really find myself anywhere. No matter where I look, there isn't a solid self anywhere. So, of course, I still exist, and I can speak and move my arms, make choices, and so on, but I cannot find a separate entity doing that. So everything that happens, everything I do, everything I say is an interdependent arising, meaning everything which happens because of everything else. So that's another way to look at emptiness, that nothing has a separate solid. So nothing has a separate solid self, and everything is dependent on everything else. That's why everything is empty. So that's what emptiness means in Buddhism. It's empty of being a separate self. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So if we go into that concept, then that's a form of nihilism, and that's too extreme. A way to look at that is looking at the two truths. So relatively, everything exists and is how it appears and functions, but ultimately, it's all the play of interconnected causes and conditions. So everything I say now is from what I have learned from other people and read. And who I am now is because of all other people that have helped me and raised me and taught me things, the food I've eaten. So everything which I call I, or is called I, is has arisen because of interdependence upon all phenomena. So there is no real me here. So let's read another quote from Lama. So you don't think I'm crazy. Let's see. So not only are the things outside ourselves empty of the solid objective reality we project onto them, the same is true for our inner sense of self. So this is called twofold emptiness in Tibetan Buddhism. So the emptiness of objects and the emptiness of self. So we instinctively feel that we exist as something very real, definite, and substantial. We have no doubt about this real me, and it seems absurd to think of it as just another hallucination. Yet, if we take the trouble to search for this supposedly concrete I or me, we will discover that we cannot find it anywhere. And this is confirmed in all branches of science. And so no matter what branch we like, we can look into this and they will come to the same conclusion. So the same is true for our mind. None of the countless thoughts or feelings that continuously arise and disappear is the real me. And of course, this solid sense of self is not to be found somewhere outside this body-mind combination. Yet, despite the fact that we cannot discover an independent, self-existent I anywhere, neither within or outside our body and mind, we still hold on to it tightly in the very depths of our hearts, as if it were most real. This innate belief in something that is not true, this fundamental source of all our problems, can be called ego grasping. So it's this mistaken belief that we exist in a way we actually don't. So if we could relax that, if we could realize this in our own experience, so not just conceptually, but to actually see that wow, everything I am today is because of everyone else. So that can help us in dissolving our contracted sense of self. So and maybe you've noticed now, if we take this analogy of emerging, opening, and dissolving of the flower, that all these three aspects are present simultaneously in the flower. So as soon as it emerges from the ground, it starts to bloom, and as soon as it starts to bloom, it starts to wither and dissolve. And so in the same way, these three aspects are present simultaneously in the realization of the true nature of mind. So in the correct view of reality, in seeing reality as it actually is, not as it appears to us. So in our meditation, when we take the time to do these practices, and when we have a glimpse of what's called in some traditions the non-dual nature of mind, innermost awareness, primordial consciousness, or just unconditional knowing of this moment. So when we have a clear glimpse of that, we might notice that these three aspects are automatically present. So meaning we automatically emerge out of seeking pleasure outside of ourselves in objects or in experiences, because we naturally have that sense of wholeness, that there is no lack in our being, that we already have everything we need. And our heart naturally opens because there is no longer a sense of me or I. So that sense has been dropped, at least temporarily. So a sense of openness can arise. And what most people describe when they have a moment of awakening is a sense of boundless love, a love that doesn't discriminate, a love that is that equally encompasses all beings. So this is a form of divine love. So God loves both the sinner and the saint. And so this is a Christian way of talking about this kind of love. And the dissolution. So as I said, it happens simultaneously. And as soon as we open our hearts to all beings, then our identity changes from this tiny poor little I, which is just one of 7 billion humans on this planet and one of unimaginably countless other living beings, and just on this one planet. So this small sense of self is looked through, can relax in that moment of recognition, because in that shift you see, I am not this sense of me. And why is that? How can I be so sure of that? Because I am aware of it. I see it. I see the structure of the ego, how it developed during this life, how it accumulated knowledge, experiences, memories, and so forth, and how that created this particular character and why he or she is the way it is. So, but who I really am is beyond that. It's not limited by these conceptions. So who I really am is beyond any sense of self. It's transpersonal. It's the unchanging knowing of each moment. So, and that's the cause for the emerging out of seeking happiness somewhere else, because that is the source of happiness, knowing your true self. And that's also the cause of great love, of unconditional love and compassion. So emerging, opening, and dissolving are all one and the same in a moment of awakening. They can happen simultaneously. So, but traditionally they are practiced separately in a step-by-step way. They are developed as distinct views until the mind has absorbed that quality and can act from that. And having developed these three qualities, the mind will easier shift into that recognition of its purest nature. So I think that's it for today. Unless I had an extra quote, maybe. Yeah, no, I think that's fine. So I think it's important when we listen to these kinds of teachings that we try to see how we could use them in our everyday lives, so that they don't just remain as a concept or as some form of obscure knowledge, but rather to play around with them and see, is there a way I could use this in my everyday life? When I'm going to work, when I'm doing my groceries, when I'm cleaning, when I'm cooking. So let's see if we can play around with emerging out of dissatisfaction and craving and wanting more and more and more, and opening our hearts to all beings and realizing that we're part of the one and the same human family, and what happens in one part of the world affects all of us. So all of us should have a form of global concern, not just a personal or national concern. but the welfare of the whole planet is important, and also the sense of dissolving our separation to all beings. So relaxing that sense of me, I, this is who I am. I am my name, my status, my look, my gender, my beliefs. And instead to look beyond that, see all of that as temporary, see all of that as changing, and look directly. So who am I? So what is the one constant in my being? What is the only thing in my experience that never changes, that always remains the same, which has been the same since I was a young boy and will be the same when I'm an old man? So there is only one thing that is that way. And you already know what that is. But if I now would call it something, then already it won't be what it is. Then it will become a concept, it will become a thing, it will become an object. So it's better not to know and to just investigate, to observe, and to rest. Okay, so that's it for today. I wish all of you to experience many moments of happiness and joy, and that all beings awaken to their fullest potential, so that we can live happy and peaceful lives together on this planet. Thank you. Bye.